This is going to be our video for Unit 1, Day 2. So yesterday in class we went over the calculator sheet, working through our times tables, and talk about how this is going to be a class where we don't use calculators. We do all our calculations and all our arithmetic by hand. So what we're going to go over the next few days is how do we do that arithmetic by hand. Some of you might have been using the calculator for so long that you actually forgot how to do arithmetic by hand. So we're going to go through multiplication, division today. We did a little bit with addition and subtraction yesterday. So first we'll go over the main way, the way you were probably originally taught to multiply, and then we're going to go through some shortcuts that you might find a little easier. So first thing's multiplication. So here I'm taking 7 times 12. Alright, this isn't one that's going to be on your times tables, on your calculator sheet, so you're going to have to write this one out. So we set it up as like this. Alright, we stack them up. Notice how we put the smaller number on the bottom. Alright, and this is going to be a process where we work through one digit at a time. So we start with 7 times 2. Right, and that one is on the calculator sheet. Right, 7 times 2 is 14. Alright, so we're going to do with that 14. We're going to take that 4, put it right here, and we're going to put the 1 up top over here. Alright, then we're going to work over to the next digit. It's going to be 7 times 1. 7 times 1 is 7, but since we have this little 1 up here, what we're going to do is we're going to add 1. And then what we have at the bottom here is our answer, 84. Alright, so we follow the same basic process once we get into two-digit numbers. So we have 11 times 13, so same thing. We're going to stack them up, smaller number on the bottom. And again, we're going to work through one digit at a time. So just like over here, we started with the green with 7 times 2. Here we're going to start with 1 times 3. Right, and this will come back to your calculator sheet. All the multiplication you need to do for these, it's all on the calculator sheet. So we're going to do 1 times 3. It's going to be 3. We don't have to carry anything on this one. And then 1 times 1 is going to be 1. Here's where we have a little trick. Right here, we're going to leave a space. Because now we're not working with the first one anymore in the 11, working with the second one. So we're moving over one digit, so now we're going to leave a space. So we're going to do 1 times 3 is 3. We're going to write that right underneath the 1 instead of underneath the other 3. Leaving a space, and then 1 times 1 is 1. Now notice we have two numbers here. What's left to do is add them together. Same thing. There's our answer. Alright, if you go to any bigger numbers and two-digit numbers, it's going to be the same thing. Every time you move one digit over, you're going to leave an extra space. Alright, so you always have these numbers that are kind of stacked like a staircase. Alright, so down here you have a bunch of practice problems, so work through these, practice through the multiplication. Some of you haven't done it for a while, it will come back the more you practice. At the bottom here, one thing important to point out, these last two were squaring. This is a special type of multiplication. Alright, for squaring a number, that means we're multiplying the number by itself. Alright, it's important to remember we're multiplying the number by itself, not multiplying by 2. Alright, so these ones are not on your calculator sheet, so you'd set these up just like we did up top. And then work it out the same way. I'll leave you to practice those on your own. And we're going to flip over to the back side of this page. We're going to go through a shortcut. So one way you can multiply a little more quickly is to use what's called the distributive property. So this is something you would have talked about in Math 1. So you've seen it before. You might not have seen it with numbers. So you might have only seen it with variables, with algebra. So what you probably remember about the distributive property is we have a number outside the parentheses, and we distribute it through the parentheses. By distribute, what we mean is multiply. Alright, so on this next line down here, what we would have done is multiplied this -2, distributed it, multiplied it for each arrow here. So -2 to x, and -2 times -1, which would be +2. Alright, over here, this is just a general rule written out in math symbols. Alright, so if we have a number outside here, this parentheses, we always distribute it, we multiply by both terms inside, and we use these arrows to make sure we don't miss anything. So the arrows can help you out, make sure you're actually multiplying every term inside the parentheses. Alright, so we can use the same property that we use with algebra, we can take it back and use it with just numbers. We're just doing arithmetic. This is how I like to do multiplication, is to use distributive property, break it up into easy numbers, those numbers that are on your calculator sheet, the Foundations of Math 2 calculator sheet. Alright, so here we want example 5 times 17. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to break up this 17. Alright, because I don't know the times tables for 17. What I do know the times tables for is 10. That's on the calculator sheet. I know the times tables for 7. Right, I know that 10 plus 7 is 17, so that's the same problem. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do the same thing we did up top. We're going to distribute, so I'm going to multiply 5 times 10. That's on the calculator sheet, that's 50. I'm going to multiply 5 times 7. That's 35. Alright, then I'm going to add those two results together. That gives me 85. So that's something that might be a little easier than doing the multiplication where we stack it up and multiply it out the way you were taught before. Alright, so one thing to make it a little quicker, when I'm doing arithmetic up here at the board, you'll see that that's usually the way I work through the problems. Alright, so we'll go through one more example together and the other two, like for you to try on your own, get some practice with this. Alright, so 9 times 15 again. What we're going to try and do is take this number and we're going to break it down to two numbers that are easier to work with. So whatever two numbers you think are easiest to work with those. If I'm seeing 15, I'm probably going to break this down into a 10 and a 5. So again, we're multiplying through, we're distributing. That's why it's called the distributive property. So we're going to do 9 times 10. If you don't know off the top of your head, look at your calculator sheet. And then 9 times 5, same thing. And we're going to add them both together. Alright, so working with easier numbers and adding. Sometimes that's a little better way of going than trying to just multiply it all out, working with more difficult numbers. So we can break things down, work with easier numbers. So here at the bottom we have something different. See, we have multiplying two-digit numbers. Alright, so this is something you might have remembered from Math 1 again. We're multiplying two terms like this. We're going to use distributive property again, but we have to use it twice. Alright, and this is something called FOIL, or you might learn it a different way. We're going to multiply the first terms, outer terms, inner terms, last terms. That's what that FOIL stands for. Alright, so it'd be, on this example, the x times x, and then x times 3, and then we move over to the 2, be the 2 times x, and 2 times 3. And we combine those in the middle. Alright, but again, we're doing this, we're taking this, which you've seen with algebra, and we're going to work back and use this with our arithmetic. So here I have to break up both numbers. So up at the top I was only breaking up one number. Right, the first example I broke up to 17. Second example, we broke up to 15. Down here, we're going to break up both numbers. So we'll do number 4 together. 5 and 6, let you try on your own. So 12 and 14, let's break these down to two easy numbers. So again, any numbers you want to use are fine. For me, I prefer to work with tens. I think tens are easy numbers, so I'm going to break 12 down, 10 plus 2, 14, and 10 plus 4. Alright, let me do the same thing we did up top. So I'm going to multiply the 10 by 10. When I do that, I get 100. I'm going to multiply that 10 by 4. When I do that, I get 40. Alright, now we're going to keep working with the arrows, make sure we don't miss anything. I can see that I haven't multiplied this 2 by anything at all. So I got to multiply the 2. So 2 by 10 is going to be 20. 2 by 4 will be 8. Now just add all these numbers up across. So 140, 20 more would be 160, and 8 more would be 168. So with these, there's even one more way you can do this, called the box method or the area method, whatever you want to call it. But instead of breaking these up, making it look like an algebra problem, you can break it up and make it look like an area problem. So we can take our 12 broke up as 10 and 2, 14 we broke up as 10 and 4, and make this a box. Alright, inside the box we're going to write the product of each of these numbers. So 10 times 10, this would be 100 in this box. 10 times 2 would be 20 in this box. 10 times 4 would have 40 in this box. And 4 times 2 we'd have 8 in this box. And just like before, we're going to add them all up. Let's see, what we get is the same thing. 120, 40 more is 160, and 8 would be 168. Alright, so we get the same result no matter which of the three ways we use. So try and work with whichever way is easiest for you. So doing these problems, we want to make sure we know everything forwards and backwards. So want to know multiplication, we know that really well. It helps us with division, right? Same thing vice versa. So we want to know everything forwards and backwards. So we're going to go through a couple examples of how we do our division by hand, and then again, give you a shortcut, make it a little easier so you can break down some of these problems. They're a little more complicated. So the first one we'll do is 1. So first thing to do is how we set this up. So here's our division sign. What I'm dividing by, that second number, that's going to go outside. And the number I'm dividing, that's going to go inside. Alright, so doing 126 divided by 3. Like it says up here, we're going to work through one digit at a time. So I'm going to start with the 3. Look at the first digit here, the 1. So how many times does 3 go into 1? Well, 3 doesn't go into 1. 3 is larger than 1, so we're going to move over. Next digit is 2, so I have 3 going into 12 now. That one I can do. 3 goes into 12 4 times. And again, don't know this off the top of your head, look at your calculator sheet. Alright, that multiplies. So 3 4s is 12. I'm going to subtract that. So 12 minus 12 is 0. So there's nothing left down here, so now I have to do what's called bringing down the 6. Alright, so I dropped that 6. Now I'm looking at how many times. How many times does 3 go into 6? So again, you can look at the calculator sheet, or if you know off the top of your head, 2 3s make 6. Again, we're going to subtract, and there's nothing left. So we have up here our final answer, 42. Alright, so this is usually the one that's the hardest. Probably been a while since you've done this division by hand, so you need to get this practice. I'm going to leave these for you to do here on your own. What I do want to point out is a shortcut for dividing by 10. So remember on your calculator sheet we saw that pattern where we multiply by 10, we're adding a 0. So if we're dividing by 10, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to take away a 0. So if we have 160 divided by 10, right, here's our shortcut. Is we can just get rid of the zeros. If you multiply by 10, you add a 0. Divide by 10, you take away a 0. Right, you can still do the division all the way out and you'll get the same answer. But as you do that over and over again, you see that same pattern. If you're dividing by 10, you're taking away 0. Multiply by 10, you're adding a 0 at the end. So now we're going to go through a little bit of a shortcut here for division. Again, just like with the multiplication, we try to break up the numbers, make the problem easier to work with. We do the same thing here with division. So here's something you might remember from Math 1 is when we're simplifying, we're called rational expressions. So rational expressions just mean fractions. So something like 3x squared divided by x. Alright, and if you write it all the way out, that'd be 3 times x divided by an x. Alright, what we saw we could do with this back in Math 1 is cancel out any factors that are the same. Again, working back away from the algebra, back to working with numbers, doing arithmetic, do the same thing. That's where this whole pattern comes from. So this process we're going to do is called removing common factors. Alright, so numbers that multiply up to both numbers in this division problem. So we're going to start with, we'll do number 9 together. You can do the other two on your own. And again, this is a shortcut. You don't have to use it, but if you find it easier, this can be a way to kind of simplify some problems, break them down to something a little easier to work with. So I'm doing 104 divided by 8. So I'm going to look for is any common factors. So what do they have in common? Alright, well if we look at 8 and 104, these are both even numbers. Alright, which means that 2 is a common factor. Alright, so if I rewrote it, 104 would be 2 times 52, and 8 would be 2 times 4. Alright, so you can take those 2's out and simplify the problem. Alright, so now we're looking at 52 divided by 4. Alright, I can do the same thing again. These are both even again, so I can cut them in half again. Alright, 52 will be 26 times 2, and 4 would be 2 times 2. And now I've broken this problem down to something that's easier to work with. Right, 2 divided by, or 26 divided by 2. I just something that's easier to work with, or you can think of just about cutting that in half. That's going to be 13. Alright, so taking out those common factors breaks the problem down, makes numbers easier to work with. So the last thing to kind of wrap up what we did today is go through some tips, some kind of shortcuts for working through this. So we break problems down. The reason we break problems down is because we want to work with easy numbers. So I say easy numbers, I mean things like 2's and 5's and 10's. Any numbers that you think are easy to work with those numbers, or always try and work with those numbers that you find easiest to work with. So we saw we can use the distributive property to break multiplication problems down, make them a little easier. If we're doing two-digit numbers, don't forget to FOIL. Make sure we multiply everything by everything. For that dividing, for that shortcut, we're removing common factors. Here's just a couple things to remember when you're looking for common factors. If you have two even numbers, you can always take out a factor of 2. All even numbers are multiples of 2. Here's a shortcut for 3. It's the digits of a number. add up to a number divisible by 3. As they add up to 9 or 12 or 15 or 3 or 6. Any number divisible by 3, the number itself is divisible by 3, so you can take out a common factor of 3. And one more for working with division. If a number ends in either a 5 or a 0, it's divisible by 5. Alright, you notice how on your calculator sheet, every number on the 5 row or 5 column ends in either a 0 or a 5. Alright, and the last thing, and we'll say this throughout the class, is I always try and show you multiple ways of doing a problem, so do whichever way is easiest for you personally. Alright, I might do a different way, that's fine. You always do the way that's easiest for you, even if it's not a shortcut. You don't have to work with shortcuts. You can always do things a long way if you're more comfortable with that. So that's it for our video for today. We're going to keep working with this arithmetic, make sure we're comfortable with this before we move into new concepts. Because again, with this class, all of our arithmetic we're going to be doing by hand. So you got to make sure we get the practice, see the patterns, and these things will be quicker. And a couple months from now, you're going to be able to do this very easily.